Okay, and at this point, if you're taking the makeup exam, let me ask you this: if you have two goods that are complements, if the price of one goes up, the price of milk, let's say, goes up, what's going to happen to the quantity? What's going to happen to the demand for cereal?
Going to go down?
It's going to go down, right. As the price of milk goes up, people will buy less milk. The quantity demanded of milk is going to go down. And as people are buying less milk, they need less cereal. On the other hand, if we have two substitutes, if the price of Coke goes up, what happens to the demand for Pepsi?
Go down.
Wait a second.
Sorry, what did you say?
If the price of Coke goes up, the demand for Pepsi
goes up.
Goes up, right? Because as the price of Coke goes up, the quantity demanded for Coke is going to go down. People will buy less Coke. And as they are buying less Coke, they will buy more Pepsi. Okay. So if you see any questions like this on a test, give yourselves an example. So if they are substitutes, use Coke and Pepsi. If they are complements, use milk and cereal. Okay. So don't try to memorize them or anything like that. Just give yourself an example, and it's gonna come out okay. 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 Now questions from the test. Let's see. I can go them one by one. Fred and Anne are giving tickets to a movie, blah, blah, blah. They both have an opportunity cost, but it's different because they are giving up different things, right? 2, straight line PPC. That means a constant opportunity cost. Agreed? Folks, you can unmute yourself and ask questions because I don't want to be just me talking. Hello, I said unmute yourselves and ask questions. Are you guys even there or?
I'm gonna go back on my exam and find the questions that I want to ask.
Okay. So did you guys do anything exciting over the weekend? Nothing?
Not really.
Other than Marisol, is anybody else there? Or you just showed up and, oh, Noah's there. Oh, there. Hi. One more person joining us. Okay, so any questions? Yes.
Can you go over the question that starts with if GDP equals 1 trillion?
Uh-huh. Yes, I can do that. If GDP equals 1 trillion, gross in private investment, so investment is 200, exports equal imports and government spending is 400. How much is consumption? Well, let's write down the formula for GDP. And the formula is and they're giving us GDP is equal 1 trillion. 1 trillion is the same as 1,000 billions. This is the guy that they're asking for. This, they're telling us it's equal to 200, right? I hope so, I don't know. Investment is 200, right? Government spending is 400. They're not telling you what exports or the imports are, but they are telling you that they are equal to each other. Well, if they are equal to each other, it doesn't matter what the number is here, because the number over here is going to be exactly the same, only with the opposite sign. So they're going to cancel each other out. You see that? Whatever the number is here, you're going to subtract the same number here. So this is going to be equal to a big 0. So 200 plus 400 plus how much is equal to 1,000? And the answer is 400.
Okay, I understand now. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah. So the key was in that question was to realize that exports and imports, they cancel each other out.
Can we talk about question number 7, please?
7, absolutely. The relationship between price and quantity supplied. Well, let's draw a graph and take a look at the relationship between price and quantity supplied. That's a supply curve. And it shows a positive relationship or a direct relationship between price and quantity supplied. At this price, at P1, this is quantity supplied. And at this price, you go to the supply curve and down, you're going to find the quantity supplied. So if price goes up, quantity supply goes up. If price goes down, quantity supply goes down. And in my lecture, I gave you an example. How come if the price goes up, quantity supply goes up, and price goes down, quantity supply goes down? And I said, imagine you have a farm and you are raising all kinds of vegetables and you take them out every Saturday to the market and you sell them, okay? And then suddenly you see that the price of a product, the price of radishes, for whatever reason has gone up because the demand has gone up. People are going gaga over radishes. Well, what are you going to do? You're going to go home and you're going to plant a lot more radishes. You're going to take out the bell peppers and you're going to take out the green onions and whatever, and you're going to plant radishes because the price is up. You want to take advantage of those higher prices. So a higher price induces producers to produce more. A lower price causes them to shy away from that product, okay? So if the price of radishes goes down, then you're not going to plant radishes. You're going to remove the radishes and you're going to plant something else.
Thank you.
You bet.
I have a question, Professor.
Yeah.
I got that same question wrong. So output is the same thing as quantity supplied?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So output is quantity. whether it refers to quantity supplied or quantity demanded. Yeah, so it's, yeah. Okay, now, again, on the makeup exam, you're gonna see a question like question 8. It's not necessarily question 8, but it's still gonna be one of those questions where supply changes and demand changes at the same time. Remember, when you have both supply and demand changing at the same time, either the price or the quantity will be indeterminate. So one of them, you will not know where it's going. And the way I advise you to do it is to do it with 2 separate graphs where you change the supply, see what happens to price and quantity, and then on a separate graph, you change the demand, see what happens to price and quantity. And the one that it's moving in the same direction, you know where it's going. The one that is moving in opposite directions, that's the one that is going to be indeterminate. Would you want me to do a problem like that, or are you fine? Okay. Okay. So again, that problem with a shirt that is selling for $20, but the maximum price that can be charged is $15. That is an example of a price ceiling. It stops the price from going to 20, where it would normally end up, and it leads to a shortage because at $15, here is $20, and you stopped it at 15. Quantity demanded is greater and quantity supplied is smaller, and therefore we end up with a shortage. So a price ceiling leads to shortages, and a price floor leads to surpluses. If the price is set above the equilibrium, then quantity supplied is going to be greater than quantity demand. All right. Any questions on taxes? Okay, good. I think on the makeup exam, you're gonna have another one of those. Family A makes $20,000 and pays $1,000 in taxes, and family B makes $40,000, twice as much, but pays $5,000 in taxes. Well, what kind of income tax system do we have? And the answer is going to be a
Progressive?
Yeah, progressive, right. Yeah. If it was proportional, you make 20, you pay 1,000, you make 40, you pay 2,000, right? Twice the income, twice the taxes. But since it went up more than twice, that means that as the income went up, the marginal tax rate went up. So that's a progressive. On the other hand, if it said you make 20, you pay 1,000, you make 40, you pay $1,500 in taxes. Then you say, oh, that's regressive. Twice the income, but less than twice in taxes. That means that as the income went up, marginal tax rate must have come down. And probably another question on the makeup exam is going to be, can you give me an example of a regressive tax that we're all paying? What was the example of a regressive tax that I gave you?
Social Security?
That looks kind of like this. The first $130-some thousand taxed at a rate of 6.5%. Anything that you may make above 130-some thousand is going to be taxed at 0. No more taxes after that. What was the example of that? That you all paying?
Social Security.
Social
Right,
Security.
Social Security tax. Okay, good. Question. Preguntas.
Could you explain question number 22? I got that one wrong.
Yeah. Aha. For question 22 was the price of cotton goes up. Well, cotton is used in the production of, it says over
Denim.
there.
So
What do we use cotton in?
for
Jeans.
jeans.
For jeans. So we use it in the production of jeans. And if the costs of production of jeans are going which way, up or down, when the price of cotton goes up?
Up.
Up. So when the costs of production go up, supply of jeans goes down. So remember, what changes demand and what changes supply? Demand changes if there are changes in preferences, changes in income, changes in the prices of related goods, substitutes or complements. What changes supply? If there's a change in the costs of production of that good. And for supply, it goes like this. If the costs of production go up, supply goes down, or it shifts to the left. If the cost of production go down, supply goes up, or it shifts to the right. So in this case, if the price of cotton goes up, supply for jeans is going to shift to the left. So maybe this would be a good idea to go in. I don't want to give you, anyway, but it doesn't. Put down on a piece of paper what causes change in supply, change in the cost of production. Costs go up, supply goes down. Costs go down, supply goes up. What changes demand? Well, changes in preferences. If people suddenly decide that they like something a lot more than before, then the demand is going to go up. If people suddenly decide that they don't like something, then the demand is going to go down. Changes in income. If people make more money, the demand for most goods will go up. Make less money, the demand for most goods will go down. Unless we are talking about
inferior goods.
Exactly. Where you have exactly the opposite. The more money you make, the less you want to buy. The less money you make, the more you want to buy. So with inferior goods goes the opposite. And again, with prices of substitutes or prices of complements change, then the demand for our good is going to change. If the price of a substitute goes up, and again, I tell you, give yourself an example such as Coke and Pepsi. If the price of Coke goes up, what are we going to buy more of? Pepsi.
Pepsi.
Yeah. So
I think I'm just confused with the difference between supply curves and demand curves and quantity supplied and quantity demanded.
Okay. Well, quantity supplied or quantity demanded is a number. Supply is not a number. Demand is not a number. Supply is this guy here. If you have, think of it this way. If you have a supply curve, if somebody gives you the supply curve for a good, what you can do is you can pick any price and you go to that supply curve and then you go down and you're going to find what is the quantity supplied at that particular price. But the supply itself is not a number. You cannot say that the supply for something, you cannot say that the supply for Ford Mustangs is this much. Why not? Because you don't know the price. What if the price is $10? What if the price is $1 million? Obviously, that's going to make a difference to the manufacturer. So the supply shows you the whole relationship. If you have a supply curve, you know you can find out at each and every possible price what the quantity supplied is. but you need a price in order to determine the quantity supplied. You need a price to determine the quantity demanded. So demand is not a number. Demand is this line here. A line is not a number. You cannot associate the demand for something with a number. You can associate the quantity demanded, but for that, you need a price. Once you have a price, you go to the demand curve and you find what is the quantity demanded. The demand shows you at each and every possible price what the quantity demanded would be. But for you to have a quantity demanded, you need a price.
Okay, that makes more sense. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And by the way, for those of you who are taking the makeup exam, again, it's going to be available Thursday and Friday, same time, same things. Everything stays the same. So with me, all the tests will be the same. Thursday, Fridays, for an hour, whenever you're ready. If you don't plan on taking the makeup exam, then just go out and check out a movie. Do something fun. Play some tennis. I can't believe the Romanian gal who was #1 favorite at the French Open, she lost. I thought for sure that she was a shoo-in to win her second French Open. But anyway, do you know who I'm talking about? No. Nobody plays tennis in here.
Halep?
Halep, yeah. Any football aficionado? I'm talking about European football. Soccer, no.
American
Man,
football.
Yesterday I had 3 matches to watch. Match after match after match. I was in hog heaven yesterday. Yeah. Anyway, yes, questions, comments, anything. So again, my advice is at this point, my advice is don't read the book. It's too late. It's too late. At this point, just go over test 1 and the quizzes. That would be the best. The best advice. Because otherwise it's too late, you know. We have a saying in Romania, when it's too late, is you say, you know, at this point, you know, you cannot fatten the pig, you know, New Year's Eve, you know. You know, the pig is not fat by that time, you know. Anyway.
I have a question about the final test. Is that going to be cumulative over the whole course?
Yeah,
or is it,
yeah. So the final is going to be cumulative.
Okay.
So it's going to cover stuff from the first test, stuff from the second test, and stuff after the second test. And it's going to be approximately 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. So it's going to be evenly divided between the 3.
Okay.
Yeah. By the way, just a piece of advice. I was going to do it myself. I don't know if it's probably not copyrighted or anything like that. But I watched, and especially nowadays with the COVID-19 and all that good stuff, it's on YouTube. And if you go on YouTube, do a search on Bayesian. Now I don't know how to spell it. Bayesian theory and false and positive testing. And
Isn't it B-A-E-Y?
pardon me?
Isn't B-A-E-Y-S-I-A-N?
Yeah, Bayesian.
Or something close to that? It's more German on that, right?
It's let me. That's
Oh, then I'm not even close. I thought there was an E after the A. Sorry.
yeah.
Okay.
It's from statistics. It's about making use of the information that you have in order to come up with the conclusions and then update it.
Yeah, Bayesian.
Yeah, it's got the E after the Y. Sorry.
Thank you.
We talked about that in my stats class a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
Wow, good memory.
If you do a search on Bayesian and false positive or false negative, something like that, there's a presentation by a guy who teaches, I don't know, is a guy with a beard. And it's really interesting about how, for example, this is the interesting part. Let's suppose that they come up with a vaccine or they come up with a test and for COVID, whatever. And in this test, there's a 10% chance that if you are negative, you will.
Are you talking false positives?
Yeah. So because there's always the chance that you are one, but the test doesn't get you. It makes a mistake. Okay. So it shows you what are the chances. Because you would think, well, if the test shows 90% of the time that you are positive and it shows correctly positive 90% of the time and 10% of the time it makes a mistake, you say that, well, you think that, well, if I test positive, chances are 90% that I am positive. But actually that's not the case. And then it shows you how, given this information, then if you test again, what's going to happen. And it's actually very interesting. Okay. Questions about this test, about the makeup exam?
Sorry, I was late coming into the lecture, but it's same number of questions, all that, same time limit.
Exactly. Everything stays the same format. Okay. It's not going to be exactly the same test. Maybe some of the questions will be exactly the same. I don't know. Mm-hmm. When I made up those tests, I just picked questions, and then at a later time, I made up the makeup exam and I picked questions again, and sometimes I may pick the same question, because I forget.
Professor, how about the project that we have to write and
I will send this week. I will send to everybody brief guidelines. Okay. So you're gonna have, pick a topic of your own choosing. Something that is popular, something that there's lots of available material. In other words, you can find articles. And then basically you're just talking about that. I don't expect any new ideas, new theories, or anything like that. I just want to see that you've researched a topic and you understand that topic. That's all. So I will email everybody those brief guidelines. Okay. And you will be able to upload your paper anytime until the end of the semester, until the last day of class, day of the final.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. So,
is it
yeah.
fair? Is it fair to describe the supply and demand curves as being a relationship, and then the specific points on that curve as being the constraint spaces? So if your relationship changes, your supply changes, your demand changes, but if the relationship stays constant, then it's just within that constraint space for supply, for price and quantity.
Again, that word constraints, I don't know how you use it. You know, different people may use it in different ways. So that's why I'm uncomfortable with it. Yeah, as far as supply is concerned and demand is concerned, is a relationship. In other words, if you have a demand curve, if you are given a demand curve, you know the relationship between each and every price and the quantity demanded at that particular price.
So
now,
the curve is a function.
Yeah,
yes.
If the relationship changes, that means that at each and every price, there will be a different quantity demanded at each and every particular price if the relationship changes. But the relationship, if the relationship itself does not change, that means that you pick one price, you have a given quantity at that particular price given back by that relationship, another price, another quantity, another price, another quantity. Like I said before, think of the demand or the supply, doesn't matter which one. Think of them like a menu. You go into a restaurant and they give you a menu, and you have at $5, you have one item. At $10, another item. At $15, another. At $20, another, and so on. You pick a different price, you're going to have a different. Say it to me.
A different menu item or a different quantity.
Yeah, a different item, exactly. A different price, a different item. Okay? At $5, you have a shrimp. At $10, you have a scallop. At $15, you have a steak. Okay? You pick $5, you're going to end up with a shrimp. If you pick the $15, you're going to end up with a steak. If you pick the $10, you're going to end up with a scallop. Now, if I change the menu, that means that at $5, I'm no longer going to have a shrimp. At $10, I'm no longer going to have a scallop. And at $15, I'm no longer going to have a steak. At $5, I may have a turkey sandwich. At $10, I'm going to have a steak sandwich. And at $15, I'm going to have a lobster. Now, that represents a different menu. Different menu is like a different demand. But on that different menu, if I switch from $15 to $5, I'm going to end up from lobster to turkey, because that was on the relationship. Okay? So this demand curve tells you at this price you have this quantity, and at this price you have this quantity. But the fact that you change the price, you did not change the demand. You just move alongside. So here at this price was the lobster, and at this price we had the turkey sandwich. But now we move to the other demand curve, to the other menu, And at $15, we had the steak. And at $5, we had the shrimp. So a demand shows a relationship between price and quantity demanded at that point. If things change, then that relationship is going to change too. If preferences change, we're no longer going to buy the same amount of goods at those prices as we were buying before. If we like something a lot more, then at this price, before we were buying this quantity, now we're buying this quantity. At this price, we were buying this quantity, now we're buying this quantity. At this price, this quantity, now is this quantity. So the whole relationship has changed. But on a demand curve, if the price changes, the relationship does not change. It's just you move from one point to another point on the same demand curve. So price cannot change the demand. Price cannot change the supply. Other things, anything else that changes and causes us to buy more or to buy less, changes the whole demand curve. Anything that changes, that causes firms to produce more or to produce less, that's going to change the supply curve. So demand and supply represent relationships between price and quantity demanded or price and quantity supplied. They do not represent numbers. You need a price in order to find what is the quantity demanded at that particular price.
I think that's what Kathy was getting at when she said constraints. So you, correct me if I'm wrong, Kathy, but I think the word you were looking for was variable. So the slope of supply or demand is, or the line is a slope, mx plus b, and price is your y and your quantity is your x, right?
Right.
So if you know one, you can find the other. And it doesn't matter which variable you put in, it's always going to be along that line.
As long as you have, if somebody gives you a demand curve, somebody says, look, somebody comes in and says something like this. Here's the demand for soda. Then whatever price you choose to pick, you will be able to determine what the quantity demanded is given this demand curve. You pick a price, all you got to do is go to the demand curve and down, and that's going to be the quantity demanded. You pick a different price, there's going to be a different quantity demanded given this demand curve. But if something happens and people go gaga, let's say, go gaga over soda, will people buy more or less soda?
Buy more?
More, but not only they will buy more regardless of the
price.
The demand curve shifts to the right.
Yes, because people
and those
are
the
buying
ceteris
more,
paribus.
whatever the price. At this price, before they were buying this quantity. But now that they are going gaga over soda, at this price, they will buy a higher quantity demanded. But what if the price was a different price? Here, with the old demand curve, at that particular price, people were willing to buy this quantity. But now that they are going gaga over soda, they're going to buy a higher quantity demanded versus before. And that takes place at each and every other price. So we have a brand new demand curve. This no longer shows the relationship between price and quantity demanded. This new demand curve shows the new relationship between price and quantity demand. Now that you know the new demand curve, now you pick whatever price and you'll be able to find quantity demanded at that particular price.
Okay, so could we continue on a little bit and then transition over to the supply curve and backtrack to the cotton pricing for manufacturers, please?
Right, okay.
So that's a direct materials cost, and I believe on the answer, it did not change the supply curve, but rather the quantity manufactured. Is it fair to be able
to change the supply of, it supplied the jeans.
Right. So is it fair to say a change in the direct materials cost will not change the relationship of what the manufacturer would like to supply rather than just changing the quantity?
No, no, no.
Okay.
Here's a supply curve. Here's a supply curve. If you have a supply curve, what does it tell you? It tells you at a given time, what is the relationship between the price of the product and the quantity supplied of that product.
Okay, not the future supply.
I don't know what's in the future. Given this supply curve, I know that if this is the price, this is the quantity supplied. If this is the price, this is the quantity supplied. Okay. So whatever the price, if you have this supply curve, somebody gives you the supply curve, then you will be able to tell at each and every possible price what the quantity supply will be. But let's suppose that something changes, such as the costs of production. In our case was the cost of cotton, right? So yes. Here is the supply of jeans. And now suddenly the cost of cotton goes up. Well, when the cost of cotton goes up, that means that firms will buy more or less cotton. You tell me, when the price of cotton goes up, what happens to quantity demanded for cotton?
It goes down.
The same.
Price goes up, quantity demanded?
Goes down.
Goes down. Not the demand, quantity demanded again. Changing the price, changing the quantity demanded. Changing the price, changing the quantity supplied. Is not a change in demand, is not a change in supply. So when the price goes up, firms will buy more cotton or less cotton when the price of cotton goes up?
Less.
They will buy less. And if they buy less, will they be able to manufacture as much, less, or more jeans when they buy less cotton?
Less jeans.
Less jeans. So they will manufacture fewer jeans, but they will manufacture fewer jeans no matter what the price of jeans is. So if the price of jeans was here before the price of cotton went up, they were supplying this quantity, but now that because they are buying less cotton, they cannot supply the same amount. They're going to supply a lesser quantity. But what if the price of jeans was this price here? Before the price of cotton went up, they were supplying that quantity. Now that the price of cotton went up and they are buying less cotton, they're going to be able to sell, they're going to manufacture more or fewer?
Fewer.
Price of cotton goes up, they produce fewer.
Fewer, right. So that means that they're not going to produce this much, but they're going to produce less. What about at this price? Before, they were producing this many jeans. Now that they have less cotton, because they're buying less cotton, they're going to produce less jeans. So they're going to produce less. In other words, we have a brand new relationship between the price of jeans and the quantity supply of jeans. They will produce fewer jeans regardless of the price of jeans. We have a brand new relationship. This relationship is no longer valid. Now, if the question had said something like, if the price of jeans goes up, what's going to happen to the supply of jeans? And then you would say,
it goes up.
No.
Stays the same?
Stays the same. The supply stays the same. The supply is this guy here.
So that would be like an example of jeans cost 20 bucks a pair, but the company decides to put them on sale. They still produce the same amount of jeans. They're just now $15 a pair instead of 20. So it's the same curve. The price just goes up and down.
No, given this supply curve, if the price is 20, quantity supplied is this much. If the price is 15, quantity supplied is this much. Given that supply curve, a higher price, higher quantity supplied. That's what supply curve, that's what supply shows you, that there is a positive relationship between price and quantity supplied. Price goes up, quantity supply goes up. Price goes down, quantity supply goes down. Whether that's true in real life or not, that's a different story. But for us, as far as theory is concerned, if price goes up, quantity supply goes up. If price goes down, quantity supply goes down. But if something else changes that causes manufacturers to produce more or to produce less, then this relationship is no longer valid. We're going to have a brand new relationship. Either it's going to be supply increases or it's going to be supply decreases. What does it mean that supply decreases? It means that before at this price, they were willing to supply this quantity. Now they're only willing to supply this quantity. At this price, before they were willing to supply this quantity, now only this quantity. At this price, before and after.
Thank you.
Yeah. So in general, think of supply and demand as relationships. It tells you once you know the supply or once you know the demand, basically all you have to do is you plug in a number for the price and you find out what is the quantity demanded, what is the quantity supplied. And that is going to be a number. Quantity demanded is going to be a number. Quantity supplied is a number. It's 400 units, 600 units, 800 units, whatever. I went the opposite direction. It was 2, 4, 6, 8, and so on. But the supply itself is not a number. You cannot associate the supply with a number because the supply shows you a relationship between price and quantity supplied. Demand shows you a relationship between price and quantity demanded.
So does a demand curve, it's not the same though. It's not like if the demand curve shifts, the price for the same quantity would go down, would go up.
No. If the demand increases, that means that whatever the price is, I don't know what the price is. You pick a price. If the demand increases, that means that whatever price you pick, the quantity demanded at that particular price will be now higher than it was before. So if the demand, imagine this, imagine that we have the demand for Pepsi, okay? And given our demand for Pepsi at a price of $10, we're willing to buy one bottle. At a price of $5, we're willing to buy 2 bottles. And a price of $1, we're willing to buy 3 bottles. If suddenly the demand for Pepsi increases, that means that at $10, before we were willing to buy 1 bottle, but now we're willing to buy
more,
because the demand has increased. We wanted more Pepsi. So at $10 before, one bottle now is going to be more. I don't know how much more, but it's more than before, more than one bottle.
So no matter what, if supply or demand shifts, the price and quantity.
At each and every price, you will either want to buy more, or you want to produce more, or you want to buy less, or you want to produce less.
So it shifts in the same direction.
Yeah, whatever the price. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the price. You will want to buy more than before, or you want to buy less than before. So at each and every possible price, quantity supplied goes up at each and every possible price. Well, if quantity supplied goes up at this price, and at this price, and at this price, and at this price, and at this price, that means that this supply curve, which showed you how much you are willing to supply at this price, and at this price, and at this price, and at this price, if now the supply has increased, that means that now you're willing to supply more than before, whatever the price is. So at this price, before was this quantity, now is this quantity. What about at this price, before and after? At this price, before and after. That means that this supply curve no longer tells me what is the new relationship between price and quantity supplied, because that has changed. At this price, this is the new quantity supplied. And at this price, this is the new quantity supplied. And this price, this is the new quantity supplied. That means that this supply curve, which showed me the old relationship, is no longer valid. So we have a brand new supply curve.
So that's always true unless you have a price ceiling or floor. Because if you have like a price ceiling, even if quantity supply goes up, the price can't go past the ceiling. So that would create a...
Let's not bring in price ceiling and price floor here. Let's just deal with supply and demand together.
Okay.
Okay. Now, if you want to bring in price ceiling and price floors, then we got to put together supply and demand. Here's demand. Here is supply. Normally, where's the price going to end up at?
Equilibrium price.
Equilibrium. Why is it at equilibrium? Because what happens at equilibrium?
You clear all.
Yeah, 100% clearing, yeah.
Okay, I want something else.
Supply and demand, they equal each other. Like
what? Not supply and demand that equal each other.
Quantity. The quantity supplied is the same as
quantity demanded.
Yes.
So at equilibrium price, at this equilibrium price, if you go to the supply curve and then you go down, what are you going to find? When you go from a price to the supply curve and down, what do you find?
The quantity demanded.
The quantity supplied at that particular price.
You nailed it, thanks.
And if I go from this price to the demand curve and down, what am I going to find?
The quantity supply.
Quantity demanded at that particular price. And they so happen to be exactly the same. So we don't have a surplus. We don't have a shortage. So that's why we have an equilibrium. Okay. Quantity supplied equals quantity demanded. Okay. Now, if the government decides that this price is too low, in the example of minimum wage, if let's say that in a free market, minimum wage, the equilibrium wage for labor, for unskilled labor, let's say, would be $5 an hour. And then the government says $5 an hour it's ridiculous. You cannot live on that. Let's make it $15 an hour. Okay. Now they impose a price floor, and you cannot go below this floor. Okay. But now what are we going to have? We're going to have quantity supplied here and quantity demanded here. And we're going to end up with a surplus.
Of labor.
Of labor, exactly, in this case. Yeah, since we're talking about labor.
Okay, and then the other way around.
The government decides that
Feeling.
This
Yeah.
price is too high. Rents are too high. The rent for a 2-bedroom apartment is, let's say, $2,000. Too much.
And we're going to put a rent control, a ceiling.
Exactly. We're not going to allow the price to go to 2,000. We're going to stop it at 1,000. Now, you see that what's going to happen is quite a few people will want to get those rents, but not enough people will want to
Shortage.
exactly rent out those apartments. So we're going to end up with a shortage, right? So for those price controls to have an impact on the market, which is what the government intends to do, to impact the market, to stop the price from ending up here, you got to put the price floor above equilibrium, and then it impacts the market, and the price ceiling below equilibrium, and then it impacts the market. If by mistake the government would put a price, let's say that they put a price ceiling above equilibrium, it would not have any impact on the market. The market would still end up at equilibrium price, and this would be the equilibrium quantity demanded. If they put a price floor here, it's going to be a big who cares.
I'm sorry, I hope I'm not distracting. For government subsidies on milk, how does that fit on this chart that you have on the board, or does it?
No, it does. What happens with government subsidies, that causes firms to produce more they would normally produce.
But the government has a price floor on the price of milk, right?
No, if basically what happens is if we have a subsidy that causes firms to produce more, because what they're giving you money to produce basically. And
so if they produce more, the price would go down, right?
Well, it's being subsidized, so I guess I'm confusing it. I'm just thinking that there's a price floor on milk, and we have a surplus of milk, or a price floor on wheat. Am I way off base here?
If we put a price floor here, given this supply and demand curve, given this is the supply for milk and this is the demand for milk, if the government comes in and says the price of milk cannot go below $10 a gallon.
Which I believe is correct, right? They do have a price floor on milk, do they not?
I don't think so.
Okay.
But let's suppose they do. Let's suppose they do. And they come in and says $10, you cannot buy milk for less than $10. And now at $10, given this supply and this demand curve, if the government comes in and says the price of milk cannot be less than $10, then at $10, they are willing to supply this quantity, but at $10, obviously we're not gonna buy as much milk. So now there's gonna be a surplus of milk. And what's usually gonna happen is the government will end up buying that surplus of milk and then probably give it away to people who cannot afford it or something like that.
I'm sorry, this is probably more at grain than milk, isn't it? There would be a price on wheat and corn.
Right. So if
pork bellies.
They put, yes.
Okay, all right, thanks.
So whenever you have the price above equilibrium, there's gonna be a surplus of that good. And when the price is below equilibrium, there's gonna be a shortage of that good.
So does the government think it's really good then to be doing rent controls when they know this is the situation on housing? Or, I mean, what's the balance?
But look, in economics, you cannot really say, this is something that it's really fundamental. You cannot say that a policy is good or bad. Because in the short run, the answer is always, it depends. It depends. Well, it depends on what? It depends on which side of the coin you are. Because any economic policy, you have to understand this, any economic policy is a transfer of money. It's a transfer of money from one group of people to another group of people. And if you are on the side of the group that gets the money, great idea. If you're on the side of the people who are paying the money, terrible idea. Rent control, for example. If they impose rent control and you get lucky and you end up getting a penthouse in a 5,000 square foot downtown high rise, and you only pay $100 for that, are you happy or unhappy?
Nervous?
You're happy, but the landlord's not.
Happy.
Yeah.
You get the point, what I'm saying to you?
Yeah,
What
yeah.
I'm saying is, if you benefit from something, are you going to be happy or unhappy?
I'd be worried about the long-term
Oh my God.
consequences. No, no. Okay, so we have to take a point in time and fix it at that time.
If
point.
I drop a $100 bill and you pick it up, are you happy or unhappy?
Happy.
Oh, don't tell me nervous, because then I can just leave it right there.
Okay, all right. So a single time point, all right.
Yeah, so basically in economics, you cannot say, well, is it good or bad? Because it depends. If I'm paying for it, it's bad. If I'm getting it, it's good.
Okay, all right.
If minimum wage goes to $50 an hour, and now you get to keep your job and make $50 an hour. Yesterday you were making $10, now you're making $50 an hour. Happy or unhappy?
At that time point, happy.
Okay, I'm glad you didn't say nervous.
Well, all right. It has to be an instantaneous time point.
But a whole bunch of people lost their job because the minimum wage went from 10 to 50. Are they happy or unhappy?
Happy.
Unhappy, okay. So
Instantaneously,
somebody pays,
unhappy.
somebody gets it. So you cannot really say it's good or it's bad. It depends on which side of the coin you are. That's the way it is. You know, it's not about fairness or unfairness. That's not something that we talk about in economics, at least not at the undergraduate level anyway. Yeah, whether something, actually there was a question on the test, I believe, and it was interesting. If the price is above equal, oh yeah, that was exactly the question. Something above, there's a surplus or something, and that meant that the price is above equilibrium price. That was the correct answer. One of the incorrect answer was, that means that the price was too high. That was incorrect, because price is too high, it's a
Value judgment.
it's something, an opinion. The price is above equilibrium, it's not an opinion, it's a fact. You know, the price of milk is $3 a gallon. That's the going rate for milk. I may think that that price is too low, or I may think that that price is too high. That's an opinion. But the fact that that's the going rate, that's a fact.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Kim, you're just blinking over there. You're not saying anything. Say something. Okay, smile. Thanks.
Professor, in the chapter number 4, in the first figure number 1, is the foregraphed, the supplies and demand up and down. So I use that for my note. Maybe that one is going to help, because this is the more complicated chapter. the supply and demand. But if you have your note, I put in my book, so when the equilibrium prime increase or decrease, the price and the demand, so you understand everything. It's easier when you see a for graphic. It's graphic number 1 in chapter 4.
You know, if you can also think, you definitely do the graphs. So if the demand, but think about it logically. Imagine that suddenly people go gaga over laptops. Imagine that suddenly the demand for laptops increases. People want to have 10 laptops, one for each finger. What would you expect to happen to the sales of laptops, to the quantity sold of laptops in the market, if everybody wants to buy 10 laptops? More or fewer laptops will be sold? Think logically. If everybody goes gaga over laptops, would you expect that more will be sold or fewer will be sold?
More.
More. If everybody wants to buy laptops, would you expect that the price of laptops to go up or down if everybody wants them?
Down.
No, it'd go up.
Expect that when everybody wants to buy a new toy. Everybody wants it. Everybody wants it. What is going to be the pressure on the price, to go up or down?
Up.
Okay. So quantity sold will go up, price will go up. But you see, if you do the graph, you don't have to think about it. All you got to do is say, here's the old supply and demand curve, and now the demand for whatever goes up. You shift it to the right, and you can see immediately that price is going up and quantity is going up. So that's why it's easier to do it with a graph. You know, just change the supply, change the demand. Questions? Okay, then let me stop here.